Okay, you're all set, Paul.
Okay, there are a few people here that are, looks like we have 19. Yeah, some people we cannot see. I see Olivia is on here. Robert Gauer, hello. Frank Collins, hello. Nicolette, we've already heard from. Sherry Feinbaum. Hello, Sherry.
Yeah, hi, Sherry.
There's Sherry.
Hi, how are you? Nice
Oh.
to be here.
Okay, and Blair. Hello, Blair. Oh, that's Shannon Blair, maybe?
Yeah, that's her name. Hey, Paul, Sherry Feinbaum, who is new to this group, was helped with a class called Baseball as a Road to God that we took.
Okay, was that a theological seminary class?
It was pretty light on that side, wouldn't you say, Sherry?
There's not a lot of theology, but a lot of baseball.
Yeah.
Which kind of could be the same thing, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what he thought.
All right, are we good here? Good to go?
I'm optimistic because even with Mitch McConnell said.
All right, we have 20 people. Herb Shankman is here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, he is.
Let the games begin. Okay, so I hear, what is that sound?
That's from Herb.
Somebody got something on that's, yeah, that's interfering with, can everybody hear that?
Paul, do you want me to mute everybody and then unmute selected individuals?
Yeah, I think that's probably at this point.
Okay. All right, here, I'll unmute you, Paul. Hold on a second. There you go.
Well, you didn't have to unmute me. I've been studying sign language and, no, I'm just kidding.
I will
Okay.
unmute Scott. I will unmute Scott as well.
Yes, let's do that. All right, everybody, are we ready here? Welcome, everybody, to the about 7th consecutive virtual SABR luncheon meeting. Of course, we know why we do this, and unfortunately, we don't know how long we are going to have to continue to do this. But I hope and wish everybody a safe and happy existence. In the meantime, welcome, and we do have a special guest today with us. He is brand new to the SABR staff in the national office in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to. I know I've chatted with Scott briefly, but I now know what he looks like, and it just gets more exciting from there. But we're going to let Scott tell us a little bit about himself and his background, and then perhaps we will direct some questions Scott's way. So we will now, without further ado, introduce Scott Carter. And I guess you're unmuted.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Paul said, my name is Scott Carter. I'm starting my 4th week with SABR, so drinking through a fire hose a little bit, but very, very excited to be here and to join this organization. You know, I think a lot of people know about SABR on the periphery, but you know, as most baseball fans, I think have some knowledge of SABR. So me, myself, being a huge baseball fan, it's great to be inside the organization and to know kind of what makes it tick, and all of the fantastic members that I've had the opportunity to meet have been extremely welcoming. So I'm excited to be here. I'll get into my background a little bit. So I'm actually here in the Phoenix area. So I actually live in Gilbert, which is southeast Phoenix, Maricopa County. And I've been in baseball for about 15 or 16 years. I graduated from college at UC Santa Barbara in the early 2000s. Seems like forever ago now, but then it started my baseball career right after that. I went to go straight into minor league baseball is basically how I got my start, and spent a lot of time in minor league baseball. So my first job in baseball was with the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, who at the time were the high A affiliate of the Angels. So I was spoiled right away, but because my first year with the Quakes was 2003. So the Angels were coming off a 2002 World Series win. So I thought selling, group tickets to little leagues to come see the Angels single A affiliate, 30 minutes away from Angel Stadium I thought it was easy business, shooting fish in a barrel, getting people to come out and do that. But obviously it got a little bit harder when you didn't have a World Series champion on your hands. But I spent several years in Rancho Cucamonga. I loved it there. I was very, very lucky. I think all of us who have some connection to baseball, or at least working in baseball, know that you don't always get lucky enough to start close to your hometown. So I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in a city called Downey, which is in southeast LA County, and Rancho Cucamonga was about 45 minutes away from home. So most kids right out of college, if they go work in minor league baseball, they're getting shipped out to Missoula, Montana, or somewhere Beloit, somewhere a low A team somewhere out very, very far away from where they're from. So I got very lucky and ended up close to home. Spent several years with the Quakes and absolutely loved it and fell in love with minor league baseball and the fact that a very small staff could have their hands in a very big operation and a lot of different things. So I honed in on the marketing side of things, and that's what I really found to be my passion within working for baseball. After the Quakes, I spent a quick stint in the National Hockey League. I worked for the then Mighty Ducks of Anaheim before they became the Anaheim Ducks. Spent a little bit of time there, and I realized that not all sports are created equal when you work for them, and I certainly missed baseball and wanted to get back to baseball very quickly. And I jumped ship back to baseball and went to go work for the Fresno Grizzlies, which were then the AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. So being on with you all, I already mentioned that I'm from Southern California. So it's probably thinly veiled that I grew up a Dodger fan. So don't hold that against me. But yeah, for 5 years in Fresno, I basically felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing that I was marketing the Giants AAA team as a Dodgers fan. So that was always interesting, trying to get excited about that. But I did have the pleasure in Fresno. Just kind of turned out to be one of those fortuitous stops in anyone, in my career, where I met many people that would become, my best friends and kind of mentors along my career. And one of those people was Scott Bush, the CEO of SABR. So Scott and I met our first year in Fresno. We were both young guns at the time, early 20s, and not really sure what we were doing, but we were lucky enough to be on a very young and very talented staff that a lot of people have gone on to do some really cool things. But Scott and I met then and formed a friendship and a bond that continues to this day. And so when the opportunity came to join him with SABR, it was an easy decision for me. So that's where him and I met, and then we went our separate ways. And I actually ended up moving across the country, and I went out to the East Coast and became the director of marketing for the Durham Bulls of the International League. So I was with the Durham Bulls for many years and absolutely loved it. It's a very, very special place. Obviously, I knew about Durham from the movie, but the operation and the community itself was better than anything I could have hoped for. Being a California kid, being out in North Carolina, I felt very much like a fish out of water for a while, but an incredibly gracious and welcoming community. And the Bulls are just a fantastic organization. So there's a little bit of mixed emotion for me. And as you guys probably know, the Bulls are the AAA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. So I had in my duties in Durham, I oversaw public relations and media relations. So I got to be very close with the team, the Rese player development crew. So I've got some very close relationships with a lot of folks in Tampa. So there's a little bit of bittersweet emotion to the fact that the Dodgers are playing Tampa Bay. A lot of the guys like Kevin Kiermaier, Blake Snell, Willie Adames, like all those guys came through Durham when I was there, and have a good relationship with a lot of those guys. My next stop after Durham, I actually got, which brought me full circle back to closer to Phoenix, where we are now. I came to work for Camelback Ranch, which is the spring training home of the Dodgers and Chicago White Sox. So I was at Camelback Ranch for 4 years as their director of marketing and corporate partnerships, and loved it there. Obviously, getting to work for the Dodgers organization was big for me growing up in LA. So to see how that operation and that organization runs from the inside was really enlightening and fun. But for me, it was a great mix of having a minor league operation where there was a small staff that was in charge of running a lot of different pieces to this big giant operational puzzle. But at the same time, it was a major league product on the field. So getting to interact with the major leaguers and the major league staff and the Dodgers staff and the White Sox staff was a lot of fun. Handle all the events at the stadium. So everything from festivals and 5Ks to one of the big events that I ran at Camelback Ranch was the Dodgers and White Sox fantasy camp, which was an absolute blast. I'm not sure if any of you guys have been to like Rocky's camp, because I know Rocky's fantasy camp is out here at Salt River Fields and in Scottsdale. But our camp was a lot of fun. So got to make some great relationships with some of the great alumni from both of those teams: Steve Garvey, Eric Karros, guys like Harold Baines on the White Sox. So those types of players that were involved with fantasy camp, and those are relationships that I've still kept up to this day, and very excited to have the opportunity to work with those guys. But that kind of gets us up to where we're at now. And when Scott Bush was looking for somebody to join the staff, and we obviously I was very excited when he moved to Phoenix a few years ago, because like I said, we were good friends from way back. So he was kind of keeping me in the loop along the way about what was going on with SABR and what kind of an organization it was. And it was all very exciting. So when there was an opportunity to join the staff, it was an easy decision for me, and couldn't be happier to be here, and excited to meet all you guys and gals and work alongside you and share our passion for baseball. So I think that's my hopefully short intro to how I got here. And if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Talk about go ahead, Paul.
Scott, with the notable exception of Dan Evans, admitting that you are a Dodger fan, you understand you are speaking to a generally hostile audience. Okay.
Yeah, I'm used to that. Living in Phoenix, while there's a lot of Dodger fans in Phoenix, they're not the most liked bunch.
So,
I'm used to it.
I have a couple of questions myself, then we'll open it on up. Did you play for the Gauchos?
No, I did not. I was nowhere near good enough to play baseball in college.
Okay.
I played football and baseball and hockey actually all throughout high school, but did not play collegiately. I just enjoyed my time very thoroughly at Santa Barbara.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Now you are your title is now Executive Vice President of SABR nationally, and that is a new position. And perhaps I know Scott Bush is on this call, and perhaps Alex, we can bring him in here to little further enlighten us about the new configuration of the national office and what he hopes will be the SABR picture moving forward. So there you are, Scott Bush.
He was lurking.
I assure you, I only popped in to enjoy some lunch with you all, but happy to chat. So the new configuration and the creation of Scott's role is honestly a move in the direction of being more like a minor league baseball staff, which obviously fits and suits my background and as well as Scott's. But the desire is to move in the direction of having fewer specialists on staff and more generalists. And so Scott's role as EVP, if we were to stick completely to nonprofit titles, I think would probably be deputy director. And so that being reflective of the fact that he will have responsibilities across a lot of different areas of the organization, including events, including fundraising, including membership efforts. Much like I carry the CEO title as an external facing identifier as the executive director, so does Scott as the EVP. So I hope that helps describe it a little bit for everybody.
Okay. Now, do we have questions? Anybody wants? Alex, can we open this up here?
Yep. People can submit questions via the chat box, or if they wish, there's an electronic hand raise function. If they simply press that, I will then unmute you if you want to. So you just look for either one of those and we will get you in. I don't see any right now in the chat box. Just a couple comments on the Dodgers.
Of course. Now, how did the Dodgers do this year? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we do have we are aware, Scott Carter and Scott Bush, that National SABR is going through a very historic anniversary, 50th anniversary. So maybe one of you could speak of that. I'll defer first to Scott Carter since you are our humble guest.
Yeah, so that's another reason why it's exciting to be, it's an exciting time to join the organization, and as it celebrates its 50th anniversary of its founding in 2021. So that's very, very exciting. But first thing that we've got really on tap in terms of programming will be SABR Day, which will be on Saturday, January 30th, 2021. So I think this year, because it'll be an all virtual event, it'll allow us to have a more of a national profile and build a kind of a national programming out for SABR Day. So that'll be exciting, and we'll be able to communicate that to chapters here, over the next few weeks, months as we get close to January. But that'll be a nice kickoff for the 2021 year and the golden anniversary. Certainly, I think everybody's big questions are about Baltimore and what's happening in June with the convention. So as far as I know, we're going to do everything we can to make it happen. But obviously, there's bigger factors at play that we have to be smart about. So that's the big one. But in terms of my role, I'll play a big part in the development side of SABR. So building on our donations and contributions from our membership. So we just launched a golden lineup fundraising campaign, which will help us celebrate the 20th anniversary or the 50th anniversary in 2021. So if anybody's interested in joining that fundraising campaign, you can go to sabr.org/donate/2020, and we've got some cool stuff to give away. We've got an anthology of our Negro Leagues anthology is coming out soon, and if you donate $100, you get a physical copy of that as a gift. But I think even cooler is if you donate $500 or more, you get entered to win the SABR Golden Ticket, which we will pull on SABR Day. But if you win the Golden Ticket, you'll get a lifetime membership to SABR and an all expense paid trip to whatever conference or convention you'd like to go to. So there's some really cool stuff about that coming up. But if Scott Bush is there, he's the one he can kind of talk to you more about all the plans that are coming up for the digitizing of the archives and some of the photo libraries. I think that he's the guy to talk to about that, since he's been working on that for a while. But that's certainly something else that's exciting upcoming for 2021.
Yeah. So with the relaunch of the redesign rather of the website from earlier this year, I hope you guys have had the chance to use the new search engine, which gets you to SABR publish research much more quickly and efficiently. Along with that, we still have a backlog of research that we've not, that we don't have included in that as yet. So for example, a lot of the older issues of the Baseball Research Journal exist simply as scanned PDFs. And so right now they're not searchable. So one of our priorities for this year is to get all of that digitized and available as part of the search, along with, we have now held 9 SABR analytics conferences, and each one of those research presentations and sessions has been recorded. And so we're actually going to make those recordings available as part of search, which means moving forward, as we hold conventions, we'll start making sure that we capture those and make those research presentations available as part of search, starting with this past summer's SABR Virtual, which was the first time that we were able to record every single research presentation at a SABR convention. Although technically it wasn't a convention, but we'll call it one for now. So we're working on that. And then Scott referenced the Rucker Archive, which is a massive collection, and we're thrilled to have it. It is a huge undertaking to organize, database, and catalog all of those images. There's more than 100,000 images in total, and we have gone down several different roads trying to identify the best partners to try to make that happen. As you can imagine, the pandemic has thrown some of those plans into flux, and we've had to adjust and try to find new possibilities. But we're very committed to finding the one that's going to lead to having all of those images available for free on SABR, as well as searchable. And if you were to want to use one of those images for a publication of your own, they will also be available to license for a very reasonable amount. And obviously for all SABR projects, they're able to be used for free. So, very excited about that, but it's certainly not going to be something where we snap our fingers and it magically appears on the website overnight.
Scott, I just wanted to point out that the Rucker Archive has a Colorado connection. Mark Rucker used to be a member of this chapter, and I'm looking around and trying to see. I think John Paul was certainly around when Mark Rucker was here and active in our chapter, right, John? And I don't know who else, but Mark lived right here in Boulder, Colorado for many years, and he was he had his private business, which was called Transcendental Graphics, and he had hundreds or 100,000 baseball images, which he's now donated to SABR. He also did a few covers for Sports Illustrated, and he was the visual consultant to Ken Burns on his 18-hour baseball documentary. Mark has since relocated to British Columbia, and but he was active in this chapter in the earlier days of this chapter. So, and I run into Mark. He shows up at about every second or third national convention, and it's always good to catch up with him. But also had a question for Mr. Bush about conventions. Obviously, Baltimore, which it was postponed in 2020, and we are all crossing our fingers about 2021. But at the rate things are moving, do you have, or does the national board, have any thought about 2022? Has a city been identified, a prospective city for 2022, or if Baltimore doesn't happen in person in 2021, does Baltimore just get pushed to 2022? And you may not be able, that may not be an answerable question, but
I think it is without giving away too much, Paul. But one of the things that everyone in the event industry is seeing, if you're holding an event at a hotel, it is the world's biggest game of chicken, because everyone has a force majeure clause in their contract that says if the event cannot be held for whatever reason, you're allowed to cancel penalty free. But the hotels will not tell you that they will activate that clause far enough out for you to make a decision free and clear. And so what ends up happening for everyone is they just rebook their event for the following year. So if we were to find ourselves again in the same situation as we were this past spring, then my expectation would be we would rebook Baltimore for 22. If we hold the conference, which I believe that would be everyone's preference, then it is a board decision on where convention is held. We have had some chats about a couple of different cities, but not specific enough to share.
Okay. Very
Paul,
good.
I have a question actually, if you don't mind.
You bet. Go, Alex.
So for both Scott Carter and Scott Bush, so just, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm asking this for the sake of our membership and people in the audience. What's going on with the analytics conference? Will that be a remote conference 100% this year? Is that still up in the air?
Yeah, so this shouldn't leave the room because we haven't announced it formally yet, but I expect we will next week. We will be shifting to an entirely virtual format for the analytics conference this spring. There's certainly an outside chance that in-person gatherings will be possible at that point. However, we would lack the runway necessary to effectively market the conference in an in-person format. So we're making the shift.
Thank you, Scott. We'll keep that a secret.
Yes, and listen, everybody, whoever you tell about this, make sure they don't tell anybody, okay?
Paul calls me once a month just so he can give me a hard time, just like that. That's
Also, this is more local an item. We do this once a month. This month, we had hoped to have the first general manager of the Rockies, Bob Gebhardt, on, and last week he withdrew because he had he's having cataract surgery. I guess it must have been a surprise surgery or something, but he had to decline our offer. So next month, I'm hopeful, and this may surprise you, Dan Evans, but we're working on having a State of the Rockies meeting, and this is something we've done many times. Usually it takes place in the spring. And time was when Jeff Bridich would come, the general manager of the Rockies, and regale us with his thoughts on the state of the Rockies. And that eventually Jeff gave way to the assistant general manager, Zach Rosenthal, who I've reached out to, and he didn't immediately say no. So I was delighted. And he said, well, let's get past the World Series. And he doesn't want to, have a conflict with potential in-person or even virtual meetings. The general manager meetings are usually the first of the big off-season gatherings in Major League Baseball. And after the World Series is over, the MLB will decide on the scheduling of that. And then hopefully we can build around that and have Zach Rosenthal on sometime in the month of November. We'll do this virtually, as we have done for a half a year now. And that's just a little local item. So I want to let you know. Do we have any other?
We have a question, lighthearted question, Paul, from Kurt Wells to Scott Carter. Did you get a chance to spend any time with Annie Savoy from when you were with
not that I can share within earsight of my wife. No, what's funny is the great thing about Bull Durham was it they use so many extras from the community that like every season ticket holder at a Bulls game has some crazy story about how they were in the crowd or they were this or that. The house that they shot as Andy Savoy's house is right around the corner from the ballpark. So, and if you guys aren't familiar with Durham, so basically Durham Athletic Park, the DAP as it's referred to locally, is where the movie was shot. So it's when the Bulls were a single A team, small old ballpark. And then the DBAP is the Durham Bulls Athletic Park, which is the current ballpark, which is basically a mile and a half down the road. So they're still the Bulls own and operate the old ballpark. So they're and they play college games there, or used to play college games there, some different tournaments and that sort of thing. But we would get to use the old ballpark for a lot of different stuff, a lot of different events. I did meet Tim Robbins while I was there. Tim Robbins was in town doing something, and he came by. And it wasn't even on game day. He just came by and wanted to see the ballpark and see the new ballpark. So we were able to give him a tour and talk to him about Bull Durham a little bit. Kevin Costner would come basically like every 5 to 10 years and like want to do a post-game concert with his band, which is kind of like a prerequisite. Like if you wanted Costner to come to the game, you had to sit through a Kevin Costner concert, which, you know, you would get mixed reviews from folks, but it was Kevin Costner, so everybody was fine to have Crash Davis in the ballpark. But I don't know if Susan Sarandon ever made many trips back to Durham, but there was always a lot of great stories. I did put on the original mascot uniform, the bull, the mascot that gets thrown at in the movie by Nuke Lelouch. Somebody called us one day and they're like, "Hey, my husband has the suit from the movie. Do you guys want it?" And we're like, "Of course we want it." So we had it, and I was the guy who got it. I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna put it on," and it's nasty. I mean, it's almost 40, it's almost 40 years old. So, but that was I did wear the old mascot suit. People would show up and be like, "Hey, I've got Crash Davis's chest protector that he left laying on the ground, and I picked it up, and it's been in my garage all these years, and you want it?" And we're like, "Yeah, we'll take it." So there's a lot of great Bull Durham stories. And I think to work for the Bulls, you've got to kind of be an idiot savant on all the quotes. And I ran the Twitter feed for the Bulls. So it's like, if you don't know that movie backwards and forwards, you're kind of in trouble.
I think Kurt will probably like that story about Kevin Costner's band. He's a musician, so I unmuted Kurt if he wants to follow up.
Well, I would like to follow up with what you display around the stadium, because I was at the Asheville Tourist Stadium this past year, and they did some of the filming there, and they've got a lot of scenes from that. And it's a neat part of visiting the stadium to see that, and I'm sure you've done the same there in Durham.
Yeah. It's funny. So so they shot a lot in Nashville. A lot of the clubhouse scenes, because the clubhouse, I mean, there basically is no clubhouse at the old ballpark. It's the locker room is tiny. So they actually filmed the interior clubhouse scenes at a different location in Raleigh. So really it's the exteriors, all the on-field stuff is in Durham. But we've got the Bulls actually retired Crash Davis's number, so that's pretty cool. We've got his number 8 is outside the stadium, out along the stadium. So you've got that, and then we've got up in the their club area, their club space is where the Bulls have displayed a lot of the old movie memorabilia that's been donated back to the club. So like I said, Crash Davis's chest protector, his face mask, the mascot suit is in there now. So there's a lot of that's in the ballpark as well.
We have a follow-up question from Chris Moyer, a member here at Rocky Mountain SABR. He asks, can you describe how you put together the national convention event in regards to location, topics, and themes for the yearly event?
Yeah. So location, again, is a board decision, and they take feedback that they get from chapter leaders as well as members at large about where they want to be. One of the one of the factors is certainly it is certainly anticipated attendance. And as you can imagine, we do better with attendance when we're on the East Coast. And so there's certainly a consideration to be given for ease of getting to the location. In terms of topics and themes, those are driven a lot by the local planning committee, and then any sort of anniversaries and things like that have come up. One of the things that we're missing in Baltimore by having to shift by a year is being part of the 50th anniversary celebration of the 1970 Orioles. That was sort of number one with a bullet for the plans. We were working pretty hard with the Orioles on trying to get guys from that team, many of whom actually still work for the organization, and so it was well within the realm of possibility that we were going to get it done. And probably as many as 3 Hall of Famers on one panel. We'll see if we can still revive that. But it's things like that sort of drive what we try to do in terms of topics and themes. Baltimore, obviously, birthplace of Babe Ruth. The Babe Ruth Museum's right down the street from Oriole Park at Camden Yards. So you definitely want to include programming that would allow folks to enjoy that. Camden Yards has been an incredibly influential facility inside of the world of baseball. And so, Janet Marie Smith, SABR member and integral part of building that ballpark. She had committed to coming to Baltimore and telling that story, being part of sharing the rich history of Camden Yards. So, a lot of it is dictated by location, and the whatever history follows up that location. And as you can imagine, we had a little bit more, all due respect to San Diego, which is a great place. There's a little bit more to work with in Baltimore, in terms of history and key moments in the world of baseball.
I may provide a little background here on this convention and further answer Chris's question. And I don't know how, Scott Bush, I don't know how much you are aware of this, or perhaps John Paul, but it used to be that different chapters, different cities would compete to host the SABR National Convention. And over time, there was a standing convention committee that would travel and do site inspections in different cities. And that was the case with us when we put in a bid in 2000 for the convention, and it was awarded to Denver in 2001, and we hosted the SABR National Convention in 2003. But over time, that whole process flipped 180 degrees to where chapters no longer were pursuing hosting the convention, and it became the burden, if you will, or the responsibility of the national SABR organization to find a suitable convention location, convention city. And I imagine the reasons for that are numerous, but I think it may be that people came to realize what an undertaking it was to host a national convention for the local committee. It's a lot. The people in the national office work very hard and very long on putting together and hosting and pulling off a national convention. But of course, for the local convention committees, they're all volunteers, and it requires a great deal of commitment in time and work. So it's an interesting phenomenon, but it absolutely flipped 180 degrees from cities pursuing the convention to the other way around. And now it was restructured to where national would come in with its own superstructure of a convention and do a lot of the groundwork and preparation for a convention before it actually happened. Were you aware of that, Scott?
Yeah, I was, and I like to think that now, because there still is a local committee, I like to think that now we put that local committee to in a really good position to be focused on what's going to make the event experience unique for their city as the host, right? So, Bruce Brown and his crew in Baltimore spending a lot of time thinking about what are the things that we could ensure that we're offering to members so that Baltimore is memorable for them. And that's a lot. That's a lot, in my opinion, that's a lot more appropriate use of volunteer effort, is making sure that they're focused on making sure that they're good hosts, rather than having to plan the whole thing.
Okay, Alex, we have more questions?
None that I see. Scott Carter or Scott Bush, I don't know if you guys want to comment on the SABR membership. I believe you guys, I don't know if you did say this, I apologize, but SABR membership, I believe, is at an all-time high. Is that correct?
Not an all-time high. It's at a 10-year high, which we're still very, very proud of. And we're thankful to chapters like this one that have been incredibly active at a time when it would be a lot easier to disappear, and have maintained their membership and even grown it. And so I'm appreciative of Paul and everybody else for your hard work. So we are now over 6,200 members, which is the first time we've been there since 2010, and we're hopeful that we can continue to grow that into next year and beyond.
Looks like we have a couple people trying to ask some questions through the chat. Shannon Blair's trying to ask, if she unfortunately got cut off, I'll unmute her if she wants to ask a question.
That's you, Shannon.
Howdy, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can.
Hey, I think somehow, can we pay some respects to some great baseball players that have left us this month, like Gibson, Ford, Morgan?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute tsunami of the passing of Hall of Famers. I mean, Tom Seaver and Bob Gibson and Whitey Ford and Lou Brock and who did I miss? Al Kaline. Yeah, it's been I don't know. I don't know what it means. It's maybe the baseball stars are misaligned or something, but it's very sad. But kudos.
Greg, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
Kudos to all of those great Hall of Famers. I'm fortunate to have seen all of them perform. Whitey Ford was a pitcher in the first game I ever attended. Yes, I'm that old, but it's really a sad thing. So we duly note the passing of a part of a rich heritage of the game, and it's sad but inevitable.
Yeah, it's 2020, right?
No, it's 2018, I think. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Greg, you have a question?
You're blaming the year on the
Yes,
death.
yes, why not?
I don't think it works like that, Shannon. No.
Yeah, but it's just, anyway, anyway,
you can't blame
kudos.
everything on that.
Right. Kudos to them.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Greg, you had a question?
I had a comment while Scott's here, or Scott Bush is here. I know you've done other restructuring, Scott. I wanted to tell you that regret seeing Deb Jane leave. She was very supportive a couple of times when I had issues. And I also want to tell you how much I appreciate the responsiveness of Jacob Pomrenke to some interactions I've had with him, a joint meeting that we held with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and SABR, and then a couple of other things. So you've got Jacob is terrific in his responsiveness too.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, Greg, and Jacob's been a great contributor to the organization for a very long time, as has Deb, who will be missed. She has been the friendly voice and the smiling face for so many members when they're reaching out to the organization. And we didn't share this when we announced her departure, but she has relocated to Florida to be closer to her parents. And so we had the luxury of being able to transition her departure rather than it being abrupt, but it will certainly still be a loss.
Scott, can you tell us briefly about the new person on board in that capacity?
Yeah, so we've brought on Chanel Zapata, who comes to us from minor league baseball. She's been working out of their office in St. Petersburg in the last 2 years. Her roles and responsibilities there were primarily as a liaison to teams, and that is going to be the skill that is going to immediately translate as one of her roles with SABR will be to liaise with our chapter leaders and research committee chairs, and making sure that they have the appropriate resources and support. In addition to that, she will take on the role that Deb had of working directly with members to make sure that they know what they need to know about renewing their membership, or accessing something online that maybe for whatever reason they're not finding right away. Things like that will be the primary focus of Chanel's role.
So it'll be Jacob continuing, and Chanel, and the Mr. Carter, and Jacob.
That's right. Yep. That's our group.
Which one of those people will serve as your driver?
What's that?
Which one of those people are going to serve as your personal driver?
None. I have nowhere to go right now. I'm stuck here in my house like everybody else.
Carter, that wasn't in your job description at all?
No. If I beat Scott in fantasy football this week, he's my driver.
Okay.
So we just have one more, not question, but a comment from Olivia. Just wanted to let everyone know that Crash Davis was raised in her hometown. So just for historical purposes. So that's good to know.
Okay. So does anybody else have anything specifically for Scott or Scott? And by the way, I'm taking on a new nickname. So from now on, my nickname is going to be Scott. So call me that.
Only if your last name is the name of a modern president.
Yes, you need a new last name, Paul, if you're going to make that stick.
Scott Obama. Yeah, that sounds pretty.
I haven't met a Scott Obama yet.
Oh, you have now. Okay, so Mr. Petty had you, sir, had submitted some ideas for a general discussion, and the Scotts can remain with us, or they can be on their way if they wish. But
Paul and Greg, do you want me to unmute everybody for the general discussion, or just keep the same process?
I think we can unmute everybody as long as
And unless we have background noise from somebody.
Yeah. And if they promise to behave, yeah. Now, Scott Carter, before you go, if you're going now, I just want to let you know, if any Dodger fan, I have a ready answer. If the Dodgers win the World Series, that's it. Well, it was a practice year, so it doesn't count. And the 32-year streak is still intact. But if the Rays win, all glory to the Rays. Okay.
Fair enough. It'll be real to me.
Unfair enough. Huh? Okay. Mr. Petty.
Well, I just think there are tons of interesting things to talk about. One could be the past season and how the implemented changes worked out, and we could talk about the Rockies. But if that's going to be the friendly talk next time, I'm sure we'll all be on our best behavior.
I'm not sure.
We could wait on the Rockies. I see that the commissioner likes the expanded playoffs and likes the runner on second base. That's worth talking about. I think while we have our insider, Rocky Mountain Saber insider, Dan Evans. I hope Dan's still there. Are you there, Dan?
He's muted. He's still muted.
I'm here
Well,
for about,
Dan,
for about
I might
5
direct
minutes.
something to you. How do you think the financial both impact this past year and what I presume is a terrific uncertainty for the future year is going to affect both the off-season trade market and free agent market? I would think it'd be a disaster for the free agents, but hey, what do I know?
Well,
So-
also you have the collective bargaining agreement is up at the end of the
I know, and
2021
which just strikes
season.
me, it's going to make everything more difficult than it figured to be horrendously difficult anyway. Could you just comment? I'd like to kind of open that up and then maybe what the future season might be like in terms of the rules and what the owners and players might talk about in terms of some permanent changes to the way the game's
Well,
handled.
I think, Greg, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the Major League Baseball landscape right now, and everybody's dealing with it. The teams that are currently in the playoffs don't have quite the same platform right now because they're focused on trying to get, the World Series completed. But I think what we're going to see is we're probably going to see a wide swath of free agents, non-tenders, very aggressive movement throughout the game. They won't have as much revenue sharing as they've had in the past. That might adversely affect some of the clubs who rely on revenue sharing. But I think what we're seeing in the World Series in general is the people who are able to, I would say, homogenize player development, scouting, pro scouting, and managing payroll are the most successful clubs. The Braves, the Rays, the Dodgers are great examples. When you're inept in player development, scouting, trades, free agency, it's really hard to operate in the 2020 environment. And I think it'll get even more complicated in 2021. And I think, Greg, what we're seeing is the better front offices were able to figure it out in 2020. The mediocre ones, held on till the end, and the poor clubs were out of the race from the middle of September forward.
So you think there's going to be some aggressive trading and
do.
moves?
No question, without a doubt. I think for a couple different reasons. I think a lot of teams have general managers who are really just dangling by a thread right now and have to win in 2021 to retain their jobs. Plus, a lot of owners are so over leveraged right now that they're going to mandate trying to win in the upcoming season, especially not knowing what the CBA landscape is going to look like.
Yeah, I would think, you see, in one case, I was thinking about Nolan Arenado, and it's also true for some free agents upcoming. For instance, Chris Bryant wanted so much to be a free agent this year. Well, hey, that would have been great for Chris Bryant. I also see the Rockies. I just looked today. The Rockies have one top 100 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, number 49. Is he an outfielder or pitcher? I've forgotten, but
Who
Zach
is it?
Green, I think.
Who is that?
Oh,
Green?
Zach Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an outfielder. He was just drafted this past year.
Yeah. So, but there are other teams. Meanwhile, the Tigers have a whole bunch of good-looking prospects, and maybe that's what you're talking about, Dan. You've got some teams that don't have much of a pipeline coming in, and I just wonder if Arenado is even movable if he wanted to be now. The $35 million looked much more reasonable 3 years ago than it does now.
Greg, I think the great players always have a market, regardless of the circumstances. And they know it, their agent knows it, and the clubs know it. I think it's the mediocre, older players who have a steeper view of their value in the workplace. I think they're the ones that are going to have the toughest times. I think teams will always have an interest in elite, game-changing players. And that's why the Rockies are faced with a really, really difficult offseason, because between Story and Arenado, they have their two best players in a really precarious situation where they could both be gone at the end of the 21 season, which would be a devastating blow to their franchise.
Hey, Dan, a question about that. You referred to the market for a guy like Nolan Arenado. The good players, the great players will always have a market. But at 35 million for next year, that market is necessarily fairly small. I mean, how many teams would realistically be even in that market?
I'd say 12 to 15.
To pay
Really?
Arenado 35 for 1 year?
One of the 10 best players in the game. And his companion to the left, they'd probably be interested in that or more a year for him because of the premium position he plays.
So you think it's that many teams?
No doubt.
Yeah.
It's an elite position that has very few elite players. He's a middle of the lineup bat, and he's potentially the greatest defender ever to play that position. So I think you've got a guy in the prime of his career that it would have extraordinary value.
What would be your thoughts on somebody like Bauer? Because I know he's open to many different things, be it a 1-year contract for a lot of money or longer if he thinks the value's right.
Robert, the clubs that I consult for say that his market value really spiked when he spoke to the Minds Analytic Conference. When he spoke to that club, it just escalated his value exponentially. Anybody knows Robert and his group were a year ahead of Trevor Bauer being an elite performer. I think Bauer is clearly the best pitcher in the free agent class. I think he's going to have as many as 20 teams involved. His agent's just going to have to decide what's the best fit for him. And I think Trevor's in a unique position in that he's at the peak of his career with analytics being a big element. So it's not going to be just on the field for him. It's going to be the support mechanisms that he has been built into, like with the Reds. As you're aware, Kyle Boddy did a great job implementing Driveline into their routine. So I think Trevor's going to have an absolutely fantastic situation this offseason. What he did in September and October was extraordinary. And I think it just further established his place as an elite free agent.
And he spoke, I watched his live stream last night when he was live streaming the game, and he spoke to like his velocity being down and how he was supposed to pitch and then they pushed it back a day because of, I think it was COVID or whatever, and that kind of screwed him up for the rest of the season. But he said he'll be back next year velocity wise, and I'd love to see him try to like figure out the mile high effect and see what his analytical team can do for that. But I don't know if we're going to get that chance.
The Rockies might not have the analytic staffing to even be in play.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Hey, Dan, I know you're well acquainted with a certain Rocky, and I want to get your thoughts on what his future might look like. And that is one Ian Desmond.
Well, I'm a little partial because I love him. I love him as a person. I saw him skateboarding yesterday with his little one. And he's a really adept skateboarder, which is no surprise to any of us who know him as an athlete. I think he'll come back. And I think he'll come back because he's a very deep human being. And I think what we were dealing with at the onset of the season was a lot of uncertainty, and a guy with a pregnant wife. I think it was a very difficult situation. I hope he comes back. I think there's still a lot of baseball left in his body. And, you know, I think he's a very talented player.
What's he got, 1 year left on his contract?
Yes.
And an
Yes, he
option
does.
year.
And an option?
Whose option?
I want to say it's a club option, but don't hold me to that.
Okay.
Well, maybe on a different topic, what about the rules changes and the expanded playoffs? I thought it was, I'll just throw in on the playoffs. I thought it was fine for this year. Maybe a good idea to have so many teams involved because of the short season. It certainly seems like we have almost an abnormal number of wildcard teams win the World Series. and when it was unique, it was kind of cool, I thought. Then when you get 2 Miami Marlin teams and 3 Giant teams and the Cardinals, and when it becomes commonplace, it's not good, I think, for baseball to not have the premier teams playing. So I just would say that 16 is a bad number going forward. I guess I read yesterday whether it would be 12 or 14 proposed upcoming, and the players would have input to that, right, Dan?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to get off on this after this. We have a major Field of Dreams announcement tomorrow that I've got my staff kind of waiting on. I think it's a good example of how a lot of people fought the norm, and a lot of the changes that were implemented in 2020, Greg, turned out to be very popular and very positive for the game. The 2 best teams are in the World Series without any question. These are the 2 best teams, and the playoffs themselves have been fantastic. I think what everybody needs to know is the collective bargaining agreement makes sure, and it just details in full, that any playing field changes have to be collectively bargained. So any of the things that we saw in 2020 were negotiated between the parties, and subsequently will have to be discussed and agreed upon in the future, which I think is in the best interest of the game. I was a little funky about 16 teams at first, but I think clearly good teams got in, the bad teams did not. I mean, if you didn't get in 2016, you're not very good, because you could be right around 500 and not get in, and some of the clubs never had a chance. And I think it was a giant heads up to their fan bases and their ownership that they weren't really very good and weren't able to compete. I think some of the rules, like the extra inning rule, proved out to be really terrific. The 7-inning doubleheaders worked out well. The expansion of the rosters to 28 worked well. They'll probably go back to 26 next year. But I think, Greg, the biggest problem is having 16 teams in the postseason somewhat dilutes the trade deadline, and also somewhat dilutes the difference between teams pretending to be contenders and not really being a contender, and kind of trying to fool their fan base at times. And there's teams in the big leagues that were doing that, and it's hard scheduling wise. It's hard to have this compressed schedule. Remember, if we don't have COVID, we've got days off. And if we've got days off, we're still in the LCS right now, which pushes the World Series into November, which immediately is a bit of a problem. So, I think that's it. I'm really sorry I got to go. My staff's waiting. I'm going to send something out to all the board members later on tonight. You'll see what I've been working on. Thanks to the 2 Scotts for joining us. I really appreciate having these things and rekindling the camaraderie that's so great with our chapter. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, I wonder if the Scots have heard, you have broader input than most of us do. Do you hear things from your fan base about what people thought of the changes in rules?
I think everything that I've heard has largely been pretty positive. I think, and then coming from a spring training background, most recently, where you see kind of a lot of the testing grounds. And we also, I don't know if you had guys that have SABR members have come out to Arizona for the Arizona Fall League experience that has happened in the past. Like our ballpark hosted a Fall League team, so you would get to see a lot of those rules changes kind of tested out in the Fall League, whether that one was when they were working on pitch clocks or just speed of game, all that kind of stuff. But runners on and extra innings. The fall instructional leagues, where no fans are allowed to come see those games, but this is where they're testing out a lot of that stuff. I think the teams like it, and that's anything that they can do to kind of move things along. I know that I think you hear a lot of the team. I hear that a lot of the national teams like the DH. That's this kind of what I've heard. And it's they're not swayed by the traditionalist of not having a DH in the National League. I think they want another bat out there. So, I mean, that's what I've heard kind of anecdotally. But who knows? I mean, I think the playoff expansion is terrifying for a lot of reasons. So I don't know. Going back to Paul's point about, if the Dodgers win, there's an asterisk on it. I mean, I don't know. I think this particular year has been the most difficult postseason there's been in recent memory. Having to cut through another round of a 2 out of 3 series is terrifying, especially if you're the top seed and you've got to play a best 2 out of 3 wherever anything can happen. I think that was really challenging. So that's the only one that I think, as a baseball fan, to me, that's the concerning one, is the expansion of the playoffs. I know it gets more people involved, but over the course of 160, the difference that sets apart baseball from other sports is that 162 game schedule. So how do you not lose the importance of that marathon and the importance of being good over 162 games versus 60 or 80 games? So,
Of all the rules that were put in place this year, I thought that the extra inning rule, starting a guy at second, would have been the toughest sell. The DH discussion has been going on for decades, and playoffs have always been expanded and contracted, but putting a guy on second base to start an inning was kind of anathema to traditionalists. But I have to admit that once I finally saw it in action, and it's just seemed okay. So somebody doubled to lead off the inning, and there he is at second base with nobody out. Okay, I can work with that. And so it sounded so crazy at first, but it's okay.
How about other people chiming in on these things?
Yeah.
Well, sure, just feel free to speak up, Chris.
Chris Cohen, go ahead.
So I'm in agreement with the runner on second rule, with one exception. I think the first inning of extra innings should still be normal, quote unquote. And then after that, it should be different. Because from what I saw, the home team got a much bigger advantage in extra innings, because if it's still tied, they just need to get pretty much 2 bases and then they win. So for me, I like the rule saying if there's 1 inning of, quote, normal baseball before the runners put on second.
Interesting. Other?
I hated the rule on second. I just hated it. I thought it was horrible. I thought it was, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, I mean, that's just wrong. I mean, you're basically putting a stat out there that was never created. And I just think, that's just wrong. So that's just my theory.
I think it was rotten eggs. This is Nicolette. I just despise the rule. The game wasn't any shorter. I just don't, it's like giving every kid a ribbon that runs in a race to me. I'm sorry, but it's just like that. And I'm with you, Alex.
Alex brings up a good point about, I mean, if you start a guy at second and the first guy up singles him home, does the pitcher get charged with a run?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, and I got a no and a yes.
No, he doesn't.
But see, that to me is just wrong then. I mean, you basically have to, that's just wrong. I mean, this
So
should be.
it's run.
Didn't put the runner on, so the pitcher is not charged with an earned or unearned run for that particular.
So then a run scored, but there's no tagline associated with a pitcher for it. That to me is that's just ridiculous. That's just beyond ridiculous.
I'm with Alex on this. I really am. That's crazy, man.
I'm with Alex also on that one, because it just seems to me somebody made contact with the ball. They got a hit, so it doesn't count. No, it only counts if somebody's on first base. Nobody can be on first base. So
I mean, I can live, Greg, if it's an unearned run, that's fine. But the fact you don't consider it a run, I mean, come on.
Well, the offensive player gets a run scored. And of course, then Alex, according to you, legitimately, he didn't do anything to deserve getting that run scored, does he?
What I mean.
But he gets it.
So
Alex,
it's equally unfair to everybody, I guess.
What's next? 2 strikes and you're out, or a foul ball with 2
Two
strikes?
foul balls and you're out.
You're out. We go back to the 1880s.
I don't think, I don't agree with Nicoletto that it doesn't shorten the game. I think it does shorten the game.
Oh, not any of the games I watched that were only 7 innings and the double headers. I was wishing Whitey Ford were pitching, so the game was under 2 hours. I saw Whitey Ford also. I can't deny it.
Why would you? Why would you want to deny that?
I never deny it because Ted Williams couldn't hit anything off him, or rarely did. It was great.
So is that the whole reason we had the runner on second and extra innings, just to shorten the game?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And I saw that the commissioner, Rob Manfred, his rationale for that was if we play the long games and they go to 15 innings or 17 innings, it jeopardizes the players' health and safety. What? The more time goes by, the less I'm happy with the commissioner. I frankly have to go on record for that. I'm
Of course, with
Playing a
this year,
contact sport jeopardizes your health.
the purpose of the 7-inning double headers, I think, did have way more rationale this year. You think the Cardinals ever could have made up 10 games? I mean, it was sort of amazing. And so I bought into it more this year than I might in future years, because they had extraordinary situations. I mean, and Cardinals especially at one time had played 10 to 12 fewer games than certain other teams. And that they were managed to even be competitive. I guess I give the Cardinals a lot of credit, not for breaking the rules and getting sick, but but for what they had to do to make up all those games.
Alex, are we still recording? Because Greg Petty, Mr. Bleeds Chicago Cubs Blue, just said he's got to give the Cardinals credit. So
We are recording, Paul. We got it on record.
I just had to tease you, Greg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I got nothing good to say about my guys. So
Except being a vector does not necessarily mean that you practice something unsafe. I categorically disagree with it. Scientifically, I disagree with it, and it's unfair to people.
Well, I fervently hope that once the World Series here is concluded, that we kind of ostensibly move into a real regular off season. November, December, and January are the off seasons of baseball. And hopefully we get to the middle of February when pitchers and catchers would ordinarily report, and the world has kind of caught up, things have gotten better to the point that we can have an ostensibly normal season next year. Even with the storm clouds gathering, we can still play 162.
It will be probably a normal season, but the question will be, how much of a fan participation will there be?
Yeah.
Chris Moyer, could you answer a question for me? I am guessing that this shortened season didn't do any favors for the discussion of whether the dropping of a whole bunch of minor league ball clubs. Do you have any insight into whether that's certain to happen? That's my impression, is it's going to be down to 120 teams.
Yeah, that's sort of what I've been hearing and reading about. I just haven't heard anything at all regarding any details on who might be involved and which teams are going to be involved. That's still in the negotiation process on that. I haven't heard anything about that. So whether we even have what minor league baseball might look like if somehow Colorado Springs survives, but who knows? It's hard to say at this point.
The upcoming year probably is pretty big risk for the whole minor league system.
Right. Considering that they're still negotiating the details on the on what leagues might look, what the levels might look like, if they're going to go to 3 AAA leagues again, whether they shuffle around some teams and which teams get contracted. So and whether this prospect league for for college wood bat leagues or something develops here for college development teams for players during the summer. Who knows at this point? I haven't heard much of anything at this point. I'm just trying to figure out what scenario could work if Colorado Springs is still in, but I have no idea.
My guess is that baseball really has, and again, I'd welcome either of the Scotts to comment on this, but that minor league baseball has just been totally put on the back burner as Major League Baseball just tries to get in this season, and that's going to be looked at maybe now that season's over.
Well, that was definitely the delay for why it didn't get done before the playoffs, Greg, no doubt. The PBA expired at the end of September. So the reality is Major League Baseball could do whatever it wants as of now. And anything that they do to assist teams, minor league baseball teams moving forward would really just be a gesture of good faith from the fact that the negotiations didn't really occur on the schedule that everyone would have anticipated. I have heard that we should expect an announcement shortly after the election. I would not be surprised if it were to happen the Friday after Election Day. It may take a little bit longer than that. I know of at least 3 current indie ball teams that will become part of affiliated baseball, or at least be given the option to. There are definitely still some important deal points out there that need to be addressed, specifically around sponsorship revenue that are being dealt with. But I think the list of 120 is likely done, and it's simply waiting to make the announcement when they've got the rest of the details in place. So yeah, that's what I know. And specific to Colorado Springs, it's very difficult, to Chris's point, it's very difficult to envision how they would fit geographically, because pretty clearly the facility and the market won't be considered for AAA baseball. And so when you start looking at lower levels with the elimination of the Pioneer League and short season ball, I don't really know how you come up with the markets that would be their travel partners at AWOL.
Yeah, that's part of the problem in Colorado Springs is there are no other minor league teams within 3 miles of Colorado Springs. When you see other cities out east like Louisville or Durham or Buffalo that have tons of teams that are within 300 miles of Colorado Springs, I think if Colorado Springs and Grand Junction are taken out, the closest would be Amarillo, and then when you figure in the Texas League, I mean, you got Corpus Christi that's over 1,000 miles away, and you've got Wichita that's over 600 miles away, and other teams in the Texas over 800, 900 miles away. And the only other option is Albuquerque and El Paso, but I mean, they're 300, 400 miles away as well there too. I mean, it's just geographically, it's not feasible right now.
Scott, I got to ask you, you mentioned something about the decision will happen after the election. I thought you were going to say after the World Series. What are the implications here about the election?
They're getting, if you'll recall, when the plan to contract minor league teams first came out, there was significant bipartisan pushback across the country, which is something we haven't seen on an issue in a very long time. And were it not for the pandemic, there would have been significant pushback from Congress on baseball contracting minor league teams. And so simply there are incumbent politicians who have told Major League Baseball, we've given you the free pass, don't screw it up by making this an issue before November 3rd.
Even though you say it's bipartisan, so.
Yeah, so they just don't want to. So if you're a congressperson in Iowa, so Iowa's going to get hammered. They're gonna lose 3 or 4 teams, right? And if you're a congressperson in Iowa, the last thing you want the week before the election is to deal with questions about why that's happening.
The whole Midwest League, for instance, Michigan, Wisconsin, not so much Minnesota, but Iowa and Illinois. I mean, so this becomes not so much, it's an incumbent versus, and especially the representatives, incumbent versus a challenger deal. I can see it now that you explain that.
Scott, John, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, Scott, didn't Nair have a podcast with lawyer owner from the Independent League about contraction a couple of weeks back?
Yeah, so he had Josh Schaub on, who is the commissioner of the American Association. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one to listen to, folks.
Thanks, John.
Go back and find it, listen to it.
So Scott, one point of clarification, will they be announcing the full reduction of cities that will be losing teams? And then also, will they also then be including in that where the affiliations will be going with the major league teams, or is that a whole separate issue?
No, my understanding is that it's very concurrent. And so they're locking in these affiliation agreements, and it will be a much longer term than historically. That used to be a merry-go-round every 2 years. And now they're going to lock in potentially for the length of the PBA, is my understanding.
Well, Scott, let me follow up, given that you've got some insight here to the minor leagues. Do you hear any talk about the possibility that there just might not be a minor league season next year, or it might be very limited?
So that's the other struggle. So if you work for one of those teams, if you're an affiliated ball, you're used to having your schedule on July 1st for the next year. And so you're sitting here today, damn near November 1st, and you haven't been able to put your tickets on sale. You have no idea, not only when you're playing, you have no idea who you're going to play. You don't know actually what league you're in technically.
And you don't know if you have fans either. I mean, you might not be able to have fans at your games, in which case it's all a huge expense.
So, just this is not any inside knowledge. This is just sort of playing it out in my head in terms of what would have to happen. In order to market this stuff effectively, you need more time. And just based on what we've seen from the pandemic, and we've seen how baseball has been able to adjust with their alternate site, all that stuff, I would expect if we have a minor league baseball season that it will not start in April as we're accustomed. I think you're probably looking at a June 1 start date, maybe mid-May. Maybe Memorial Day we're playing minor league baseball, but I think it's probably June 1st. Just because it's what it's going to take to get all this in a row. Because aside from getting the schedule together, we're probably looking at holistic league realignment. And so you're gonna have operations people that are having to make travel plans for places they've never gone before, right? You've got markets that are working with one another who don't know each other today. It's going to be very, very messy, and it's going to take time to figure all that stuff out.
And Scott, is that why they have moved the amateur draft from early June to the All-Star break for next year?
So that was their intention very early on, and it went hand in hand with the elimination of the short season leagues. So that was really what that was.
Okay. What else we got, Alex?
Chris posted a question on chat. Chris, I hope it's okay. I'll just read it. Could a later start be beneficial to teams? I would assume a late start also means a later end, allowing for new draftees to play more in the first season.
So I would assume if they start late at the minor league level that just means a condensed season would be my assumption, Chris. I could be wrong about that for this year. Maybe they just extend it because they want to get games in on account of the fact that they missed it for the whole year. But you know, the new draftees, again, they're pushing things in a direction where we should not expect to see a lot of action from any draft picks in the future. You know, if they get to the developmental facility wherever the team has it, and then maybe they play some fall ball or something like that. But this is really going to shift how we understand the start of the development curve for a drafted player.
And you have the Arizona Fall League, which I suppose could be expanded or something else, even in Florida, if they wanted to do something special, just even without fans, to have some competition. I mean, it seems to me that having the staffs that you have with minor leagues becomes an issue too, and paying them. And boy, it's I would just think teams got creative this year, and they may have to get creative in the future. And we see a lot of things change, at least for next year, where you don't know that fans can be in the ballparks. Or
Olivia has a question or comment.
Paul, just so you know, it's approaching 2:00 and I'm going to have to log off pretty soon.
Oh,
So.
okay. This could go on all day, and we've made arrangements to do that through the night, and actually, and no. And
thanks for joining the telethon, everyone.
Yes, the SABR telethon. I think at this point we should thank Team Scott and for their participation.
yeah,
It's
thanks, guys.
very nice to meet you, Mr. Carter, and nice.
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody, and special thanks to Alex and to Dan and to Greg and to everybody else who contributed. It's always nice to see people. Thank you again for participating, and happy Halloween. Don't forget to vote. Has everybody voted?
Oh yeah.
Voted?
Voted.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well,
Thanks, everybody.
thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Scott.
Take
See you
care.
guys.
Hey, I hope school's going good for Robert and Christopher.
Thank you.
Go Raise. Go Raise, buddy.
Bye, guys.